FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You're listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry, Lutz. Election season, silly season right around the corner. With us now is Dr. Gerard Lameiro. He is author of Renewing America and Its Heritage of Freedom. He's been writing extensively about the 2016 presidential campaign. A lot of activity, at least among the Republican candidates, both announced and unannounced. And he's here to speak about it now. Dr. Lameiro, welcome back.
It's great to be back with you.
Hey, so first we've got Ted Cruz's announcement. Then we've got Rand Paul's. And, well, looks like Marco Rubio not far behind. Your latest article, will it be a Bush-Clinton race in 2016? I'm skeptical of both of them. I don't know about you.
I am too. I share your skepticism. Everybody is coronating Hillary Clinton and saying that Jeb Bush is going to walk away with it. They've got them posted as front runners and getting the nomination with ease. I don't take that tack. I don't know for sure who's going to get nominated. No one does, probably. But I don't think it's necessarily going to be the front runners.
Yeah, I think major Bush fatigue, and I think there's a problem with Jeb Bush. I think that the base sees what the elites don't see or don't want to see, is that the person that wins has got to be a fighter. Can't just sit back passive like Mitt Romney and just think that you're above it all and everything's going to work out fine, because it's not. We've seen 2 guys now, McCain, who is a fighter but fights his own party, and then we got Mitt Romney, who just sits around and does nothing, takes all their abuse, and boom, he didn't make it. So
you're right.
Problems.
You're right. And just to give you a couple of examples that I like to use, if you recall the 2008, and I'm sure you do recall the 2008 primary season, when it all started, people were talking about Rudy Giuliani as the foregone conclusion of who was going to get nominated because he was so successful in managing the 9/11 crisis. And Hillary Clinton was automatically going to be nominated in 2008. In fact, with baseball, when you have the 2 New York teams fighting each other in the World Series, they call it a Subway Series. 2008, they were calling it a Subway Series election because they thought 2 New Yorkers were going to run against each other. Well, the outcome. Hillary didn't get it, and neither did Rudy. And another example I like to use is Mitt Romney's father back in 1968. He was the former governor of Michigan, an auto company CEO or president, and he was the clear frontrunner for the Republican Party nomination in 1968, and ultimately he lost to Vice President Richard Nixon, who went on to become president. So front-runner status does not guarantee a nomination by any means.
No, I just don't see it. My belief here, Doctor, is that if Hillary Clinton was going to be president, she would be president now.
I think you're right, and I personally think that from a political power perspective, meaning how much resource can she bring to bear on the primary process, I think she peaked in 2008, and I think it's been downhill. She also has to deal with the email scandal, or what appears to be a potential scandal, and a bunch of other factors that playing against her, like Benghazi and all the issues in the news. So I think that probably she won't get nominated, and I also doubt if Jeb Bush will, because I think most people are hesitant to see one family have 3 presidents in rapid succession. I think people don't like the idea of royalty or a king or people getting automatically designated. There's a certain amount of Bush-Clinton fatigue in the country. We've heard about those two names for years and years, and do we want to hear them for another decade?
I think not. And well, at least with Clinton, we could go back to some good old days, at least the perception of the good old days, and maybe think that better times. But for Bush, disaster, horrible times, 9/11, it started out and basically got worse from there. So I just don't see Bush being electable, or even that people look back. Although these days have been so bad under Obama that maybe we will look back on the Bush years as as the good old days at some point, right?
Well, I think George Bush, Herbert Walker Bush, and also George W. Bush were good people. I think they were solid citizens, just as I think Mitt Romney is a solid person, solid family man, and a good person, moral person. But in terms of the election, it is a tough battle where you're being attacked constantly, unfairly. Attack ads are common. That actually goes back 100 years when socialism was sort of getting off to a start. The way they attacked the opponent was not to attack on an issue because they couldn't win. Socialism doesn't win. Progressivism doesn't win if you debate the issues economically. What wins for them is attacking the personality, attacking the character of the people they're running against, because they can't win on the issues. They never have been able to.
And you see, this is the failing here, Doctor, of the Republican Party and conservatism, libertarianism, is them not coming back and say, why are you attacking me? Why aren't you discussing the issues? They never do that. They are really ineffective and pathetic, and they just don't know how to frame the issues and frame the debate. And for that reason, I argue that perhaps they don't deserve to win if that's the best they can do.
Well, that's not the way to win, and you're 100% correct in your analysis. You've got to fight on the issues and bring them back to the table on the issues and pivot from their attack ads to the real issues that matter. And I'll tell you, Ronald Reagan, for whom I actually worked on the campaign many years ago, he brought the issues to the people. And when they started criticizing, he said, there you go again. There you go again,
right.
There you go again. And he brought it back to the issues. And the American people knew where he stood. And because they knew where he stood, they were happy and they voted. And he won in 2 elections landslide. He had over 400 electoral votes in 1980. He had over 500 electoral votes in 1984. So when Americans are given a clear leadership choice with conservative values, they win. They don't win on wishy-washy things and trying to be Democrat-like. That's one thing I agreed with on Rand Paul's announcement this week about if we're just Democrat-like, why bother? And he's right. If you're going to be a Democrat, you might as well vote for the real Democrat and vote for the progressive socialism policies that they offer.
Right.
So I'm in total agreement. I think you're exactly right on. And I want to bring up another thing that I think is real important about the front runner status, and that is front runners may get nominated, but they have to align with the fundamental issues of an election cycle. And I wrote a piece, 10, 20, 30, not 30 years ago, but maybe 20 years ago, called 10 Laws for Winning Presidential Elections, which was true then and it's true today. And it says in the 10 laws that the 3 big issues of any presidential election are peace, prosperity, and personality of the candidate. And in particular, there's usually one dominant issue, and I call that the law of the dominant issue, where the dominant issue will tend to have most voters line up with the fundamentals of that issue. And right now, I don't think, and I don't see either Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton aligning with those issues. Now, maybe they will somehow and present a compelling case, but let's put it this way. Right now, I think their front-runner status is at risk.
Right. That is a great point. So what do you think the biggest issue right now is that we're facing? Is it economic or is it security?
Well, there are two big issues, but there's always only one dominant issue. And what's interesting about this, I'll tell you the answer to the question, but what I'm going to tell you first, kind of by way of preface, is it could flip on us in the next year and a half. But today, the number one big issue, the dominant issue, is the stagnant economic situation, the economy and the uncertainty around it. We have the Obamacare uncertainty. We have the fact that there's 56 million working-age women who do not have jobs. Over 93 million, it's gone up now just recently, over 93 million Americans working age who are not in jail, who are not in a nursing home, right, who do not have jobs. That is a terrible loss of gross domestic product for the economy, okay? People, even who have jobs, are uncertain that they may lose them. And if they lose them, they know what their neighbors are facing. It's very difficult to get back in the workforce because so few people are hiring due to economic uncertainty and trying to deal with all the regulatory issues that companies now face, not to mention taxes, too, our tax structure. So that's the number one issue. The number two issue is global insecurity and uncertainty. We see beheadings. We see threats to America. We hear about terrorists who are coming across our borders. We're hearing of narco-terrorists coming across our borders. We're hearing threats that they're going to have the ISIS flag fly over the White House. This does not make people comfortable. They're also worried about Ebola and viruses coming across this open border because our current administration will not enforce the American borders. That is the second issue. But if we have a terrorist attack in the next year and a half, and I hope we don't, you could see the big issue becoming global insecurity and uncertainty, and in fact, our insecurity and uncertainty from a strategic security point of view.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. And look, terrorist attacks, you never know when they're going to happen, where, right? I mean, that's the whole point of them. And who knows? It could happen at any point. Many believe that we're living on borrowed time, right?
That's right.
So
yeah, and you hear all the time about explosions, chemical plants blowing up, power outages. There are all sorts of things we hear about, but we always hear they're not terrorists. Even the Fort Hood.
That was workplace violence. What are you talking about? That was
workplace violence. And so was workplace violence when that grandmother got beheaded in Oklahoma.
Right.
Because somebody tried to push Muslim religion or something on someone who didn't accept it. That's workplace violence? I don't know. Funny definition, because I never heard of that years ago when I worked in industry. Anyone would get beheaded. So there are a lot of concerns people have, and they're not like sharp concerns where we hear people talking about them loudly. We hear them quietly talking to their friends and families and neighbors, but in their voting, they're making statements. And in the 2014 election, we saw a clear movement to the right and to traditional constitutional values, the rule of law, things like that. This administration has made a habit of flaunting the Constitution and following what had always been traditions of the White House and the overuse of executive orders. People are remembering these things, and they're going to vote this way. And if you notice, both Rand Paul and Ted Cruz, the two Republican-announced candidates, are both taking a grassroots campaign approach. They are going to the people. They're trying to build a constituency. And importantly, they are trying to bring new people in to vote. I listened carefully with Ted Cruz's announcement at Liberty University, and he talked about the millions of Americans who sat home in the 2012 presidential election. A lot of them, maybe because they didn't have a conservative alternative, and he hopes to offer them one. And then Rand Paul hopes to bring in young voters that haven't been voting, and he hopes to bring African Americans over to the Republican Party because of their traditional family values. So there is a real movement to bring people into this next election, and if they do, I think it'll be a bigger landslide than we saw in 2014.
Could be interesting. I'm not convinced, but hey, you never know about this, and we really need to see what's where the public's going to come down on this, because there has been an expanding dependency mentality in the United States. So what's going to happen here? Well, we'll have to see. But it's never
a lot of it is going to depend on who is the Republican nominee. If that person is a leader, a fighter, someone who articulates the values that most Americans have. I mean, we know most Americans are basically center-right, and they have conservative values. They like the Constitution. The same dynamic is happening that happened in 1979, 1980. American people were fed up. They were concerned about crime and things like that. If the right person is nominated, it's going to be a landslide.
So here's the question. Is Ted Cruz electable? Or has he been so demonized both by the right and the left that he's untouchable now?
No, not at all. That's a badge of honor.
Well, I agree with you, but I just know what they did to Sarah Palin. Now, Sarah Palin's not perfect, but the fact is she actually had a record in Alaska that was pretty darn good, and they made mincemeat out of her, and, she's really never recovered from it. So is he been Palinized is what I'd like to know. She was not a moron, Sarah Palin.
No, Sarah Palin's a good person. She never ran for national office on her own. If she did, she probably would have done a lot better than John McCain.
Yeah.
But, they did the same thing to Ronald Reagan. They were saying it was a radical, right-wing, warmonger, or whatever the words were they used. I don't recall exactly, even though I was in that campaign. But basically, they really tore him apart. But the American people didn't care. They voted for somebody they believed in because they saw his values. They saw he was a good person, moral person, and a leader, a true leader. Mm-hmm. Ted Cruz is a leader. Alan Dershowitz was quoted as saying that Ted Cruz was off the charts brilliant, the number one student he ever taught in Harvard Law School, and the best debater Harvard Law ever had. He was a two-time national U.S. debate champion, and after he got out of law school, he wound up being a law clerk to the Supreme Court Chief Justice, Rehnquist. Now, that's a pretty incredible fact. Not many people get to be the law clerk for the Supreme Court Justice.
Hey, I totally agree with you here. I just believe that between John McCain, who I think intellectually, John McCain is really substandard in every way. Finished damn near last in his class at the Naval Academy. Can't hold a candle to him. And he calls Ted Cruz a wacko bird. These guys are really Lindsey Graham. They're just not in the class with Ted Cruz. And he's a fighter. He's not going to take any garbage from the likes of the Hillary Clinton attack machine. I like the guy. I think he's brilliant. He actually has read the Constitution multiple times, more than I have. I've read it several times, I have to admit, over the years. And I keep a copy of it handy, just like I keep a copy of the Bible handy. So when a question comes up, I'm actually in a position to go to the original document and find out. But you know what I'm saying? They're always apt to try to marginalize them. And as much as I respected Reagan was not in the intellectual class of a Ted Cruz, right? No, we know this.
Ted Cruz is special. Yeah. A person like him doesn't come along very often, maybe once every 50 or 100 years. He's an incredible person. And I didn't start out by thinking he had that good a chance, but the more I've learned, the more I've seen an incredible person. So I'm expecting he's going to be one of the leaders in the top tier in the primary season.
And one other thing, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. One other thing, judge a person by the enemies they keep, right?
That's a good point.
And
that's a very good point.
And he's definitely had an effect on that body, the U.S. Senate. He really has. People, many of you might think that the government shutdown was a big mistake. I personally think that it was a heroic effort to save us from Obamacare. And they should be saying, well, look, I tried to save you from Obamacare, but nobody out there had the stones to do it. So what can I do? Yeah.
And by the way, his campaign themes are also going to be resonating with a lot of people. I just talked to someone about Obamacare and their personal situation, and the stories are like horror stories. And you keep reading them and seeing them and talking to people. There are a lot of people with pent-up interest in eliminating Obamacare, and of course,
they don't want to do it, though. You know, the Republicans have no interest in doing this.
It depends who you mean by Republican.
The hierarchy. I'm talking McConnell and Boehner have no interest in doing it. None.
Right. Well, that's why the American people are going to probably vote for an outsider and not for a Washington insider. And
that's a great point.
Great point. Into that Washington insider. And I do not think this is a year, 2016 will be a year for an insider to get elected.
Great point.
So, and I like Jeb Bush, and his family is great. I've had a chance to talk with one of his brothers and stuff. So there's nothing personal about this. I mean, he would make a president 100 times better than we have now. But I don't think...
Well, so would my dog, but we're not electing my dog.
So, I think it's just a case of this is an election where an outsider is going to win. And both Rand Paul and Ted Cruz, as of now, are positioning themselves as outsiders. It looks like Ben Carson's going to enter pretty soon, the race.
He shouldn't bother.
Like Marco is going to enter. There's also an issue of money, too, that'll be coming up, because we need money to run a campaign.
Did you see how much Cruz raised last week? He raised $31 million. Where is that money coming from? It's got to be Wall Street. And Wall Street is the big enemy of the people now. I don't care how you cut it. These guys own the Congress, period. So there's the issue of Cruz's wife being a VP at Goldman. It's got to be vetted. Anyway, Gerard, we got to go now. Just tell us where we find your work, your blog, how we connect with you.
Okay, I have a really nice website. It's got about 35 web pages, renewingamericabook.com. And that gets you to my website, or GerardLameiro.com gets you there as well. You can get the newest book. It's got a lot of information that's helpful. And there's a lot of free stuff on the website, like the 10 laws for winning presidential elections is on there. Just click on the button that says laws.
Excellent. And we'll have the links on our website, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Go there. Check out the site. Got hundreds of articles on alternative finance, precious metals investing, what's happening in the real economy, not what the administration is telling you that everything is fine and recovery is right around the corner and a chicken in every pot and happy days are here again. Forget that. You know it's not true. Hey, Dr. Lameiro, it's always a pleasure talking with you. Thanks so much for being on.
Oh, it's been great being with you.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.